My name is Anna Porter, and I am speaking about billionaire philanthropy, which is a side topic of the main topic. I was talking just a couple of days ago with a man called Peter Monk, some of you may have come across, and he said that people with a lot of money have an obligation to give back to society, which is why he gives back, and which is why there's a monk school, and there's a monk cardiac center, and so forth. Billionaires, many billionaires, choose different ways to give of their money. I wanted to mention Gates and the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation. Their ideas are around health, productive lives for other people, poverty, vaccines, HIV, AIDS, polio, etc. It's mostly health related. They were joined by Warren Buffett, who is the second or third richest. He goes up and down a bit. Man in the world, and he merged his foundation with the Gateses because he liked the Gates idea of how to dole out the money. He is planning on give his $44 billion of stocks in the Giving Pledge. Both of these people are looking for quantifiable results. In other words, you give vaccines and you want to come back and measure the effectiveness of your charitable works. It's an interesting way of looking at it. John D. Rockefeller supports institutions and communities, slightly different. The Ford Foundation, 8 decades, a mission to reduce poverty. I guess it hasn't exactly worked out, but promote international cooperation, that's their second. Once again, alas, not a whole lot of that going around now. However, their ideas on microfinance seem to be having a little bit of traction. The Carnegie Foundation, of course, big, giving away a lot of money, libraries, art, museums. Conrad Hilton, children with HIV, youths in foster care, homelessness, or how to avoid homelessness, safe water. The Richard Branson, Virgin Airlines, Virgin Unite charity. His idea is to unite people with entrepreneurial ideas. It's a little too soon to know how in heck that's going to work out, but it's an interesting new approach. The J. Paul Getty Trust, way more easy to understand. Preservation of visual arts, very simple, easy. I like the Johnson & Johnson legacy, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Full range of health issues, as you would expect, Johnson & Johnson. And also eliminate poverty. Not so much yet. Billionaires come in all shapes and sizes. One thing that you can tell even from this short survey is that they are, by and large, they're men. I haven't yet met a self-made woman billionaire, but I am very much looking forward to that opportunity. I'd like to know how they are different from some of the people I've just talked about. I became interested in the subject because I was fascinated by one billionaire philanthropist, a chap by the name of George Soros. And some of you may have heard of George Soros, the man who broke the Bank of England, an unusual guy who has a broad range of charitable interests, if they are indeed charitable, and I'll come back to that in a minute. I first came across him in Eastern Europe, where he was supporting individuals who were rebelling against the communist regimes in those countries. He was equally devoted to try and help Russia. Russian scientists initially, and then democratization in Russia. He actually spent a little over $1 billion in Russia alone to inspire them with democratic ideas. And those of you who read the news from time to time may have a notion about how well that has worked out. He's very different from some of the people, from all of the people really that I have mentioned, because he has a specific philosophy. The philosophy is called open society. That is, in fact, the name of his foundation, Open Society. The idea being that all societies should be open, that you should be able to disagree with your fellows in the same room, in the same country, and not be jailed for it. You should be able to say what you think, freedom of speech, human rights, and all of those good things. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that as a philosophy. In practice, it's very difficult to quantify how this works out. In the case of the Open Society Foundations, they're driven by an interventionist idea, which is open society. It must be an open society. So this would take him into, and his foundation, into a place like Georgia, for example, not in the United States, the other Georgia, and decide that it's time for a change of government. And he funds people who agitate for a change of government, and he gets rid of one government. A new government comes in with a man called Saakashvili. Some of you may still remember. He's the guy who decided to fight it out with the Russians with predictable results. And of course, he was also no longer liked by the Open Society Foundation, and he's got a new guy in, and so forth. He has a range of interventionist ideas that are put in practice all over the world. I've only mentioned one country, but let me mention Ukraine. I happen to agree with him on Ukraine, but then I'm Eastern European. I agree with trying to do something for the Ukrainians and against the Russians. I'm not so fond on Russians. He's been lobbying the European Union against Russian intervention in Ukraine, and he's been lobbying for added aid to the Ukrainian government, which of course is also mired in controversy because of the lack of transparency in the Ukraine. He's been a great benefactor to Human Rights Watch, and somehow some of that has worked out. His current preoccupations include eliminating the ending the war on drugs. New drug policies. He would be very interested in what's happening in British Columbia right about now. He believes that our current drug policies will only cause harm to the people we're trying to help. He wishes to preserve the European Union. And when I last talked to him, I asked him if he's managed to get his ideas before Angela Merkel, and he said, unfortunately, she won't see me. So he hasn't. But while preserving the European Union, which he feels is very important because at this time the Union has become a conglomerate of debtors and creditors, and it is not a sustainable situation for the Union. However, he's also advocating that they take in 1 million refugees a year, or migrants, and give each one 15,000 euros upon arrival, and let them choose where they wish to live. Now, that may have added just a titch of annoyance to Angela Merkel's view of George Soros and his ideas, and I suspect that she may be even less inclined to meet him. He's been very involved in US politics. He's not the only one, by any means, but I get a daily feed on George Soros being the most dangerous man in America. Every day, every day. He's, of course, viewed with overt suspicion by Republicans, but not only Republicans. A lot of Americans think that his interventionist policies have extended to the US and that they're doing more harm than good. And I don't just mean the drug issue. He tried to get rid of George Bush, the second term. In 2004, he donated $27.5 million. And of course, George Bush was re-elected. He supported Obama, but he's disappointed in Obama now. And when I asked him why, he said, well, Obama won't listen to me. And I can see that because, of course, George Soros knew more about the world than Obama, who hadn't actually traveled very widely when he was elected. But I can see how Obama would have been irritated by this. In fact, he told one of his aides after a formal dinner, when he was seated next to George Soros, he said, if that SOB ever sits next to me again, you are fired. He's not the only billionaire engaged in US politics. The Koch brothers are equally active, and they have no other interest. In other words, they're not also mucking around in Ukraine, Myanmar, all over Africa. He's got foundations all over Africa. And I think one of the problems with Soros's foundations, and the good that well, it's not good. He doesn't wish to do good. In fact, doesn't want to be thought of as a do-gooder. What he really wants is for people to believe in his ideas. He wishes to change the way people think. And I think part of the problem is that he's looking at it from the top down as opposed to from the bottom up. I mean, a case in point is the approximately $500 million he's spent on trying to help the Roma in Europe. And of course, the Roma do need help. They need a lot of help. He has produced educational facilities and scholarships, and many Roma have gone and taken advantage of this. But alas, instead of taking this education back to their communities, those who have benefited in this way are actually no longer viewing themselves as Roma. My last comment on George Soros is that he wishes to support ideas that are worth dying for. An interesting way of looking at philanthropy, wouldn't you say? Thank you.